a massive game.
Yeah.
We have a colossal game, a game that perhaps rivals the Tri-Nations game that's going on Saturday between Australia and Argentina. We have a game between two informed sides, England and Ireland
In Twickenham.
In Twickenham.
Yeah.
For us this is massive, but for the tournament this is massive as well. This is Pool A was billed as sort of the pool of death it is, and this is likely to decide who tops it.
Yes, indeed.
This is mouth-watering. I mean, we have a Toji and Daragh up there, but England, arguably the best team in the world at the moment, and an Ireland team that's trying to come, that has arguably, for all of our gripes, been the most successful of the teams with new coaching tickets this year. Has failed to fall up. Maybe France, obviously, with Galtier coming. But Galtier was kind of in charge of the World Cup.
He brought in the World Cup to kind of, and he improved things there, and they've just kind of kicked on. I think Ireland have done a creditable job, but this is a huge test, obviously. Just in terms of the game itself, it's going to be on Saturday, obviously 21st of November, 3 p.m. kickoff over here, and ref by Pascal Gauzer. So Frenchman is the man in the middle, and just the weather forecast a few days out says it's set to be about 13 degrees, little breezy, little cloudy. Relatively low chance of rain, which is
that is,
positive.
as you would say last week, quite November.
As it is still November here.
You might get away with it, in London. That's decent conditions for rugby. A bit of breeze, maybe a bit of rain, but nothing these guys aren't used to, and it's not going to be apocalyptic conditions by any stretch. Maybe a bit of a wet ball.
Yeah,
but outside of that, they should be all right.
To try and play a bit of rugby and stamp their authority. And just as far as the colour of the fixture is concerned, obviously Eddie Jones has a lot of. He's the hype man for rugby a lot of the time, and he's been billing it as his biggest of the year.
He's great. He's comes up with all the tricks. My fear for Eddie Jones is that eventually it's going to stop working for him when he has to come up with new and crazier ways to get his players dialed into a game. But now this game is the biggest of the year. He does like to talk big, but there's definitely a truth to it that like a win here would put them in pole position, you might say, to secure even more silverware this year and really stamp down their authority as Europe's best side. I think they have a mind playing France in the final.
They do. Well, they want to get that win. They want to get that win. They lost that, and it meant that there wasn't that authority. There wasn't a Grand Slam in the Six Nations, even though they were the better team in it, and they did manage to get the trophy at the end of it. Yeah, they'll still have a bone of contention to pick with France, and this is their chance to tee up that rematch of what they'll be thinking. But they can't overlook an Irish team. They certainly won't, I don't think.
They do have to avoid against complacency, and that's probably why Eddie Jones is focusing their minds. And actually, this is the biggest game of the year. Yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. Because they have such a powerful recent record against them, coming off a performance against Georgia last week, which was fun and so. But this is definitely a step up in an area just want to be sharper in the handling and sharp in the physicality and doing what they do to Ireland. In terms of colour, from an Irish point of view, these games these games are scary.
Scary fixture. England and Twickenham.
It's possibly flown under the radar to some extent. I think everyone has an idea of it, but actually these games against England sides, amongst sort of the Irish media and the Irish sort of broader rugby diaspora, I guess, has been something of like a talking point. They've always been, really since the 2018, they've always been a key sort of telling indicators. Really over the last 2 years, there have been 5 consecutive defeats to English teams that have really, really hurt Irish rugby. I mean, it started in Dublin in 2019. It was like a humiliating home pasting that very quickly and very brutally crushed all of those notions that had been swelling of being the world's best side since that world.
Fresh from beating the All Blacks and thinking we were number one in the world.
They were winning all of the awards.
Sexton Player of the Year.
Sexton Player of the Year, Team of the Year, Coach of the Year. You're all of this, 2018, a year out from the World Cup, in perfect position. Even Brian O'Driscoll, I think, was going on media, British media, and saying, actually, I don't think there's a single English player I'd pick in the Ireland team.
Yeah, all that
and then
crazy chat.
Yeah, and then February 2019 comes and they destroy us it takes Ireland a long time. They never really recover from it.
Yeah,
they go through the motions in the rest of the Six Nations. I think they pick up a bad loss to Wales at the end of it after scrambling through the midsection.
They do,
after that defeat to England, but they never really got that mojo back. Then the second crushing defeat to England came in club colours, actually. It was in the Heineken Cup Champions Cup final, where you had Leinster and Saracens playing each other in Newcastle. Both sides really backboned by the same personnel you see in the green and white jerseys.
It's true, yeah.
Leinster, very, in many ways, sort of the pride and the shining light of Irish rugby in recent times as a club side.
Certainly.
Fell victim at this occasion to the English side's raw brutality and physicality in what was a commanding second half performance where they took control and really did cement a level of dominance of like, we're getting the edge on these guys.
Yeah, it's true.
The third and most brutal one then came in the World Cup warm-ups right after Ireland came out of a World Cup camp in Portugal where they were presumably putting their plans in place. Any confidence that they might have gathered, any momentum that might have been got from that, was instantly chalked off by a really, really brutal 57-15 defeat to England.
Yeah, they were nowhere in that
Twickenham.
game. Yeah.
That was Ross Byrne's last start for Ireland, and he is scheduled to start this week, and that's obviously another factor.
It's true.
Earlier this year, fourth defeat in a row, you would say, to English teams in a big game.
Yeah.
Six Nations this year. Deja vu, kicked in behind us, owned it physically, sharper, more to the pitch, all over us.
Yeah.
Another crushing defeat. Every one of these defeats crushing, dominant, not close.
Yes.
And finally they wrapped it up since the restart with a Heineken Cup Champions Cup quarter-final match between Saracens and Leinster, again a rematch from last year. Leinster had gone unbeaten after that Saracens defeat the year previously, only to be beaten by them again this year.
Yeah.
Owned at the scrum, owned in the contact, beaten up, over at half time. Leinster came back into it, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Another commanding victory for an English side, edging the physical battle over Ireland.
Yes.
And so that 5 defeats in how many months is that, since February last year?
Not many.
Not many. Yeah, not many.
Yeah.
So that is 5 consecutive bad defeats.
Yeah. Dominant
defeats to English teams, bullying them physically and outsmarting them and outworking them and just looking utterly superior to them.
Yes.
That has taken its toll.
Well, it's one of the big things that needs to be remedied from an Irish point of view. They need to get something off against this English team for them to believe that they can anymore. Like it really did burst the balloon of Irish optimism, and it really hasn't quite returned since. It's definitely a pivotal one. Despite being over in Twickenham, they will want to put it together a cohesive performance. It starts with not getting blown away in the first quarter, which is actually more so than the Leinster games in that list. It's been the first quarter for Ireland against England the last few years has just
and
been
the Saracens game
England.
In the quarterfinal, to be fair.
Quarterfinal, actually, that's right. Yeah, no, I think in the one instance was the final a couple of years ago, the Leinster final, where the Leinster actually took a lead 10-3 and then coughed it up before halftime, and the second half was all Saracens. But if we can not get blown away in the first quarter, please, and let's have a contest here, that would improve things immediately, and then you can be in the game and try and mix it up. Yeah,
I mean, there are some encouraging signs coming off that Wales game. The bright new sort of Kiwi additions of Gibson Park and James Lowe have added some much needed spark and some tempo.
The offense was so stale before them, and it definitely has increased in tempo and a little bit more bite in it, for sure.
So Ireland know they need to bring something new to this game. And the question is this just going to be another painful addition to the long list we've listed off, or is there some kind of riposte? Is there some clever play that they can bring to this game? We are going to tuck into it in terms of previewing both sides. We'll start just with the squads. We actually have the Irish team, which is great, and we have the English squad, which has been named down to about, I think, 20 odd players. We don't know who's going to be starting and who's on the bench, but we can pretty much guess. And we have a good idea. Like the 2 loose heads are Mako Vunipola and Ellis Genge. 2 hookers, Jamie George and Tom Dunn, Sinclair and Stewart in a tight head. I would suspect the locks will be Hill and Itoje with Launchbury on the bench, and the back row will be Curry, Underhill and Billy V. Probably with Ben Earl on the bench. Where it gets interesting is the back line. They'll have Ben Youngs with Dan Robson to come on, but whether they go with Farrell and Slade and maybe Ollie Lawrence with a bit of heft, or Jonathan Joseph with a bit of speed in 13, or whether they go back to George Ford, Farrell and Slade. That's an interesting dynamic. And then in the back 3 there's interesting questions. Max Malins or Ollie Thorley could be given the shout.
Very, very green as far as they have a cap each, I think, Malins and
Thorley excites the hell out of me. I think getting him on the pitch would be no bad thing at all.
For sure.
As far as the Ireland squad is concerned, this one has been named in its entirety, mercifully enough. They've made some changes, but more or less the same heads. Cian Healy Kelleher gets the nod at hooker.
Yes.
Porter maintains it, coming on from close to a man of the match performance last week.
Yeah.
Quinn Roux and James Ryan in that lock. Quinn Roux wears 4 despite being the tight head lock because Ryan is captain and captains are 5s.
Apparently.
And Stander gets in a blindside flank, switched with Daragh, who's at number 8, which is nice to see.
Good to see, finally. Yeah.
O'Mahony gets the 7 shirt, which is an interesting
call.
Given Will Connors is a bit of a energizer bunny coming on off the bench, like he can run for 80 minutes, but he's on the bench and he will come on. O'Mahony's form is great. Gibson Park at 9 keeps his jersey. Great. Excellent news. Had a really great game against Wales last weekend. Ross Byrne gets the nod at 10 over Billy Burns. I'm encouraged. He's
definitely better than Billy Burns, but I'm as you said, his last game in a green jersey was in Twickenham in a shellacking.
Maybe there's a part of his head that's wishing he could have got the game against Italy instead of only being given a chance at Twickenham.
Yeah.
Aki and Farrell in the centre in the absence of Henshaw and Ringrose.
Yeah.
Fine centres, very defensive, very physical, not the best passers, just like all the other Irish centres.
Yes.
James Lowe maintains his position on the wing, and Keith Earls gets the other wing position, while Keenan is in position, correctly selected at fullback, which is
very encouraging. Daragh at 8 and Keenan at fullback. Something that should have been done from the very beginning. It's good to see it here in time for the Twickenham.
That one rectified. Yeah. On the bench is Rob Herring, Ed Byrne, Finlay Beelum, Ian Henderson, Will Connors, Conor Murray, Billy Burns and Jacob Stockdale.
Yeah. Some good impact there for sure.
100%.
Yeah, I suppose we will pivot on then from the just in terms of a few other notes on the squads. Just the point about Ireland, it's the most project players ever fielded by the Irish team. It's
5 of the 15 are project players.
That's interesting.
There isn't a comment really to be made on that, apart from they've notably made it a decision of theirs, and it has been decided that the rule was a bit silly and since stopped.
Yes.
But it is what it is. Every team is, from Japan to Wales to the All Blacks, have all done it, and there's definitely a touch of residency rule being exploited to it, but
it is what it is.
As long as the guys are committed to the team and committed to the game and want to bleed and represent the country with as much passion and as much gusto as they can, there really can't be any complaints.
No, exactly. I don't mind picking on form when form dictates it, and like Aki is well worth his place. Low
Bundy
definitely.
Aki, talk about an attitude, that guy, just what an attitude he has.
Yeah, and CJ Stander as well. No one could fault his commitment to the cause over the years. So it's just an interesting little note that 5 of the starting 15. But I think that's all we have on squads. We will pivot into just the winning conditions for both of the sides and what they'll be looking to get out of the game and how they will be looking to implement their game plan. And we'll start with the hosts, which is England at Twickenham, obviously, and how they're going to look to attack Ireland. And we kind of know, we're kind of experts on how England attack Ireland over the last few years. But
Eddie Jones always seems to make a point of being sort of he wants to be the innovator, he wants to be proactive and not reactive, and he wants to sort of second guess how Ireland are going to approach what he has been doing and coming up with something new.
Mm-hmm.
But one wonders whether the formula that's worked for so many occasions in a row might not be
just the wisest call to go.
I mean, they start the game like a house on fire. They keep the pace of it really quick. They own the contact area with sort of dynamic and physical carries that are subtle as well, in terms of you don't know who's getting the ball. They're all coming onto it at pace.
Offloads
They're linking up with each other, getting over the gain line, and then Ben Youngs is just a mover on her, gets there, moves it on, and all of a sudden it's into the hand of the playmakers, and they can get reads on the Irish defence. If the Irish come flying up, they can probe in behind with little kicks that have tortured the Irish back through.
They have really. Even last week we saw Wales manage to, the few plays they did probe was with little attacking kicks, and England are better at that than Wales. So that with all the kickers they have in the back line, I expect them to try and move around.
Well, not to mention not just the Wales game. I mean the game prior in France, which you could argue was the last time Ireland were given a game. I think 2 tries, like the Stockdale apocalyptic play with just a little grubber in behind, and then Stockdale spills it, the French kick on, and Daragh ends up actually giving away a penalty try, a yellow card by playing a guy off the ball. You can cause catastrophe on the evidence of how Ireland have been dealing with these balls by putting probing kicks in behind.
It's true.
And even Roman Ntamack, the Irish defence shot up. They had Murray on the field, who was lined up as a winger, and nobody in the backfield. Ntamack, little sharp chip off the left peg, gather, pop inside, try. There are tries to be scored by doing that against Ireland for sure.
And England are the best at it in the world with all their multitude of options. So I'd expect that to be a big part of how they approach it, as well as just pace. Moving the Irish about is a surefire way to keep them on their heels and not defending proactively but reacting to what England are doing, which is England are all about that. They like, as you say, to be proactive and to be the ones dictating the tempo of the game. And they've had a great success doing that recently. I think one of the key areas, though, that they are missing, or that is different and changed from those games, is the absence of a Manu Tuilagi. A big notable absence of Manu Tuilagi, because his record is a perfect one against Ireland. He's, I think, 6 from 6 any time he's lined up against Ireland. And without him there in that midfield, it's probably the Irish midfield that'll have the more heft between Aki, Farrell, and it's
something that you've seen from England all the time is the strike plays, particularly off line out, where they go off the top, and the first thing they do is get a Tuilagi right into the midfield, right into the heart of the two Irish guys, who try as they might. Often it was Henshaw and Ringrose, but even Aki's and Farrell's couldn't really stop him. He's over the gain line. He's getting yard.
And by the time the centres are sat down.
Yes, the centres are sat down, and then by the time the ball gets to the deck and gets to the back, Ben Youngs is already there. Farrell and co are already around the corner, and they're ready to just open up Ireland on the second and third phase. Usually, actually, what they did is a Tuilagi carry, Billy Vunipola or someone gets around the corner, him carry, Irish defence completely at sea, then the ball goes wide, so it's that third phase strike. And even if Ireland are desperately working away around the corner, they can flick that back to short side. They have all these kind of little tricks where they're looking at like these 3 phase plays. We sit them down, we get around the corner and sit them down again. But as you say, without the Tuilagi in there, they could have an Ollie Lawrence come in and try and sort of run that model with Lawrence running hard lines. He definitely commits to contacts and runs really hard. That is one way they could go about it. What they could also do is just narrow things up a little. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing the 3-phase strike play where you're actually going off a shorter line out and getting Billy Vunipola running right down the 10 channel.
Yeah, a different way to go.
We don't know what Ireland are going to do, but generally the defensive line is Sexton at the 10 channel running out of the line. He's usually supported by a back rower, but he comes in and makes hits. If Ross Byrne is going to be lined up similarly, getting Billy Vunipola into his face-off first phase is likely to yield results. Get the ball to the base, round the corner, another big carry over the gain line, then it gets to phase 3, Ireland's defence is fractured, and that's where the backline strike. That is the model. Offset piece, they are ruthlessly efficient off lineouts in particular. And that is something that they're going to really, really focus on, I think, to open up the Irish defence and break that confidence.
It'll be just interesting to see how they shift that, because whatever combinations they go with across the 3/4 line in the midfield might give them a chance to go, as you say, a little narrower or perhaps a little wider sooner. They'll want to probe and test the 13 channel of Farrell and maybe get outside them.
But I think that comes on third phase. Probably, I think they back their physicality. I think it's phase 1 smash, phase 2 smash. Now Farrell's gets his hands on the ball and we move. And that model has worked for them.
The other thing they'll need to be mindful of is if Ireland are bullish and up to this, they do have jacklers everywhere and turnover artists, so you don't want to that
whole back row. That whole back row, Daragh, Stander and O'Mahony have had superb games where they've dominated the breakdown area from a defensive point of view, so they can't get lost. Like when I'm talking about Billy Vunipola smashing, he does it with a man next to him, usually a Curry or an Underhill right next to him, or a Johnny Hill. Those guys, it's on them to work hard and
resource
support.
the offense.
Exactly. This is how they make it quick for Ben Youngs. One guy goes in, owns his contact, Latcher comes in, drives him, he goes to deck, Rook's already over. And then Ben Youngs has
already
the ball.
gone.
They have to be really focused to that, because as you say, Ireland could show up and be much more physical and have a Pumas-esque performance where they're coming out and making big tackles and making things awkward for England.
Chest pumping and all of
that's
that
where
stuff.
The Latchers need to really come in and help England and make sure that the breakdown ball is clean. Because there are other things to do once that offense gets stopped. Like that's your set pace strike play, but on multi-phase as well, you can work Ireland, you can work the short side, you have multiple distributors. All you have to do is really get that defensive line up, to put a little probe and kick him behind, maybe commit a winger up and kick it over his head. They have such versatility in their backline and such beautiful shape to it as well, that they're never really out of it. They're one of the teams you'd trust most on multi-phase if they'd only trust themselves sometimes.
Sometimes they kick it off, kick it away prematurely. It'll be something that Ireland will be looking to force, but generally they know the formula to beating Ireland. Sure, as we've said at the highlight of the preview, they've done it routinely for the last couple of years. But then when it comes to defending without the ball, England, it's a slightly different test than what they had. Like Ireland are playing a different kind of game, so they'll have to be alert to that. But there's things will probably have to change a little bit in terms of the width and speed that Ireland are bringing, and also just the new personnel in the centres for England. Like, it's a slightly different job when you don't have a Tuilagi there do a lot of the hefty work.
And it's a slightly different job as well when Ireland are trying to bring a bit more tempo and a bit more subtlety, which they have been doing.
Yeah.
They're still playing off 9 a lot, and obviously when Sexton went off, they were playing off 9 nearly exclusively.
Yes.
But there was more. There was cleverness within the limitations of Ireland's play, as has often been the case over the last few years. It was nice to see them being a bit more clever
and a bit quicker.
Yeah. So from England's point of view, like, there was a couple of moments when James Ryan was shaping to get a ball and the ball didn't go to James Ryan, and there was a couple of clever things like that. They have arranged forward pods with a bit more width and a bit more spacing, and they have clever systems in place to make sure that the ball carrier is disguised.
Yes.
That said, the Gibson Park scrum half loop play that yielded a line break against Wales, England will be chewing at the bit if Ireland try that shit. Like the Gibson Park gives the ball to a forward who pretends to carry and pops it back to Gibson Park, and Gibson Park runs around and throws a screen pass to the out half who's in space. Like, England will come pouring through on that. If they see that shape at all, someone's going to come flying out and get Gibson Park as he gets the ball back. Mm-hmm. So that's something that England will, I think, target. If Ireland are trying some of those goofy plays that it's been one of the most painful pictures for us as Ireland fans watching them against England. They lose the physical battle, and then they still try to run these goofy loop plays where there's no tempo to the game, and England just see it coming, and often it would be Sexton getting the ball around the corner with nothing to look at, and just a big white jersey in his face smashing him. And that's definitely, if Ireland are trying to play those sluggish kind of shapes, they should exploit that and they should get on top of it.
Yeah.
But the key, obviously, the initial key is going to be to try and squeeze the life out of the Irish ball carriers. The Caelan Daragh carries that were so successful against Wales, stopping them, driving them back,
and then have your Underhills or whoever into the breakdown to make it scrappy and slow and disrupt what Ireland are trying to establish as their rhythm, because there is only a brittle confidence to what Ireland are doing ball in hand, and if they can stop that, then they probably will revert to type as we've seen before, and England will be able to gobble
slow down, kick the ball in the sky, and then England are laughing.
Exactly. As soon as Ireland are doing that, England have already won the game as far as I'm concerned. So it's pretty. There are a few key areas as well. Ireland have definitely struggled when they're in the red zone as well. They've got even more so. They've tightened up when they get within 5 metres of the line.
Well, the Wales got a couple of big turnovers as well. It was almost comical. They were playing good rugby in the middle third, and then when they got to the 22, they were trying to do Exeter stuff, and they weren't particularly good at it. They scored a nice try with Quinn Rue where they were bringing a bit of tempo and they had a bit of subtlety to it, and they managed to get a rhythm going.
Rollins completely softed out of that tackle with Quinn Rue, where I suspect Hill or Itoje would not.
Indeed, but even more is the point, there were a couple of occasions where it completely slowed down, and even Wales managed to get their hands in and get the turnovers because Ireland had got white line fever with it and couldn't move the ball. From an England point of view, harrying them and making these balls as awkward as possible and committing, bringing, if they ever try and go wide, bringing a full-on blitz in their face, like these are the kind of things that Ireland, lacking in confidence, especially in that red zone, they are liable to drop the ball. They are liable to get cold around that breakdown area, attacking the pill,
or
and
just get shy about moving it as well. They still, their comfort zone is still picking jams, despite it being like the worst thing you can do against England. So if England can force them into doing it, that's a good key to their success on D. And just a few other things to be mindful of. Obviously, James Lowe, we had cited, is a live wire. Was busy last week, came off his wing. You'd expect if he is coming in field to do it, the English will be lining him up for a big smash. If he's working off his wing in those tight areas, he won't get the same purchases he did against Wales. Certainly that little carry, like a try that he scored was great. It was lovely to see the pick and jam from Caelan Daragh, the little soft hands to him. But like that channel there, that shouldn't be shouldn't be as soft as it was, and I don't think it will be for England.
It's definitely an area of interest for them. I think actually the two centres, Farrell and Aki, are big strong boys for Ireland. Like it's going to be interesting to see how England contain them if Ireland are trying to get them on the ball. They sometimes function as auxiliary flankers, which is something England find easy enough to deal with. If Ireland are trying to get them a little wider and moving them 2 passes, they're actually quite good offloaders of a ball. So if they can get on top of you, if England are on their heels a little bit, Farrell or Aki can win a contact, get the hands free, and pass it either to one or the other of them if each are picking a line off each other.
To James Lowe,
etc. So that's definitely an area of interest. I think when Ireland are trying to go wide, England should bring, like, once the ball gets out of Ross Byrne's hands, I think you're in full on sort of blitz mode.
Yeah.
Because
the passing of the centres is so suspect that
they
you want
create,
pressure.
like, you're not, even if you leave a little bit of space in behind or leave a fractured line, I genuinely don't think the distribution skills are there for Mackey or Farrell to open that up.
Yeah.
So I think you're just getting in their faces. Then obviously you have to check yourself a little bit while Byrne has the ball, because he will put in the crossfield kicks. He'll put in kicks in behind. He's a very good kicker of a football. But once the ball goes from his hands, you're bringing a pressure defence, shutting down Tuilagi and Farrell and forcing them, if they want to go wide, to throw a pass. What did I say?
Tuilagi.
Oh, sorry.
It would be nice if Tuilagi was in the Irish midfield, but he's never has been.
Putting pressure on Aki and Farrell and forcing them to throw maybe a pass they haven't got in them is definitely the key there.
Big chance for success. And the final thing is as you say, that Ross Byrne will be there to try and kick the ball. So between Ben Youngs and the back three, just be alive to that threat.
Yeah.
Keep the pendulum going, cover the backfield space, and try
something
and shut
that Ireland
down.
have brought in the last couple
a
of
bit
games.
More of an attacking kick.
It was obviously with Sexton in there putting the
that little
loving
grubber kick. I was encouraged to see it. So yeah, just being mindful that they are trying to work it in and just getting your spacing right on D for sure. But then when we get to the set piece, that's where things kind of get really interesting. This is probably where the game will be decided, is in the set
huge
piece.
I mean, you go back to last week, Ireland, like, there's no reason why they wouldn't be confident after monstering the Welsh scrum. Completely and utterly. Great engine room drive from Quinn Rue, really seems to have turned Porter scrummaging around. Porter does have some demons from the last time he faced Saracens. I think it might have been Richard Barrington who hung him out to dry, though. I don't think it was Mako. I could be wrong about that, though. But he was destroyed against Saracens in the scrum, which was the last real painful scrummaging outing he had. But he is in a great place.
And Quinn Rue does add a lot of heft in that. It is probably
I think it was probably Devon Toner behind him in that Saracens game, which is obviously worse.
It is much worse. I think it's the best part of Quinn Rue's game. I think it's why Joe Schmidt put trust in him, is that, like, he's a little loose all over the park a lot of the time, but he is strong in the scrum. And their whole selection, to go back to the squads briefly, is just seem to be focused on set piece. Certainly Ireland's one, between the selection of Quinn Rue in the row to shore up the scrum, and the selection of Peter O'Mahony with CJ Stander there. O'Mahony in particular, just for line-out disruption. Because he is world-class at jumping at two and turning the ball over.
Last week against Wales, they picked off, I don't know how many
between himself and James Ryan, they were making a nuisance
even
of themselves.
Quinn Rue got a steal. It was colossal. And likewise, England will be coming with all the confidence in the world, in that they basically had a set-piece drill last week where they were attacking the Georgian scrum, getting the better of it, really did
scrumming aggressively for penalties.
Ended up owning that scrum battle against a very good Georgian pack, and then at the line out caused absolute havoc on Georgian ball.
Maro Itoje's second half line out disruptions are he does it to all teams, not just tier 2 ones, but he's a monster. Like,
it was brutal watching him doing that to Georgia. Like, I felt so bad for Georgia because he was so pumped up. It was why are you so pumped? Could you not just be like dialed out and leave the Georgians meander to a defeat?
Look, they're telegraphing. They're jumping at 2 now. Oh, there they go. No, Maro. Okay.
It was absolutely brutal to watch from a Georgian perspective. And then they also scored a hat-trick of maul tries. They were really on top in that area.
So their set piece is looking very well drilled and very sharp. But so is Ireland's, and Ireland look to have focused on it. So I think this will be a pivotal battle. Both teams like to strike off set piece. You saw
England in particular love to strike off lineouts, and I think Ireland do need to be brave here and really try to attack that lineout. I think they need O'Mahony and James Ryan to be up, making reads, trying. It is one of their winning pictures, is causing the English line out havoc.
You saw it with the Springboks in the final. They're like, if you can cause that upset, obviously scrum time was all Springboks, but the line out was disrupted and flowing. It was so pivotal. The English kind of don't really know what to do when that rhythm is upset. So that seems to be the focal point for Ireland, is to disrupt the line out and to match them in the scrum, and then make the game about other things as well. That's kind of what it is. And then the restart is the other set piece that really, from an Ireland's point of view, just get it right. They got the restart right, but in terms of defending or exiting off English restarts, there needs to be some improvement from Ireland, because like, this is the one team, the main team, that have really shown up the box kicking. It's the exclusive box kicking exit for the folly that it is, and they have punished us routinely.
And they force teams to kick under pressure so well. The only time they mixed it up was in the World Cup final, actually, when they kept kicking to Willie LaRue down the middle,
which was silly.
It didn't work at all. The Springboks exited easily. I suspect the Springboks would have had some tricks up their sleeve to exit anyway, them being themselves. But definitely they're dealing with that English kick-off is massive, and they like to pin teams deep in the corner and force them to kick under pressure. Then they get the ball back at the line out. All of that obviously changes if Ireland can maybe work James Lowe's left boot in, get a little more depth, maybe disrupt things at the line out.
Maybe throw a couple of passes in the 22 to get yourself into a better kicking position where you're kicking on your turn.
There have been some occasions over the last couple of years when Ireland have been so slow and so predictable that in fact we saw it against France. You don't have to go over the last 2 years. You saw it 2 weeks ago where you had to zoom in on the scrum half and you could see in the background Gail Fico and the like just drop back. Just like, oh yeah, they're box kicking.
Box kick. We're box kicking, everyone. And here comes the box kick, guys. We'll give you a 5 count. 5, 4, 3, 2 in the sky. We lost it.
Indeed. But like one of the things that Leinster had worked in actually was setting up that slow box kicking and passing it and trying to go wide.
Well, it was on for Ireland a few times because there were even centres dropping back and you're like, space, and it's like, no, we're still going to kick it in the sky. So hopefully not, because again, England are the ones who have doled out the harshest lessons for doing that, the harshest punishments. So really the restart from an Irish point of view is a key
and it'd be nice to see them try and impose that picture on England themselves, trying to launch that ball deep, Ross Byrne accurate kicking and a good kick chase and pin them back and try and set up our own offence as well is definitely vital. To pivot on to Ireland themselves and in terms of their winning conditions, as you say, and how they're going to go about this game. First of all, just with the ball in hand, they never looked as pitiful and as poor as they have against England, obviously, as we've touched on in recent times. The ferocity that they bring in the contact has been pretty much the antidote to the Ireland slow play off 9, trying to resource the ruck, trying to generate some momentum and make a team make a lot of tackles. They have been bashed into submission. They've had their backline taken out of the game, and their slow play has been shown up, and then they've ended up kicking the ball in the air to no avail against an English team that's very ready for it.
So hopefully that does not continue. The positives from Ireland's point of view is that they seem to have shifted that point of focus. You have Gibson Park, who is a passing scrum half, not a kicking scrum half, which is a fundamental change in terms of how you want to go about attacking. So that is a positive change. Also, Ross Byrne, despite the last time he was in a green jersey, obviously a poor performance in Twickenham, but I will say that, and it's been true for Leinster, I've often said it, I really don't like when we go Luke McGrath, Ross Byrne, because I think both of them have narrow instincts where they sit too deep, but I think the only times I've seen Ross Byrne be really excellent is when Gibson Park is there throwing passes out in front of him. It's
definitely a nice crutch to have him with a scrum half he knows who can get the best out of him.
For sure.
That's definitely massive. We talked about how Ireland have more mobile forwards. They've had to in some areas, as we've spoken about, pick heft and set piece prowess over mobility in some areas, which is a shame. Like Ian Henderson would be a great guy to have out there. He is on the bench. Likewise, Will Connors.
But they good impact from both of them.
Yes, but good impact from both for sure. But we do have some very, very mobile forwards, and O'Mahony has renewed his form. He's got an offload game going. He's keeping up with the pace of the game better than most.
Seems to enjoy the new pod system. I think. I think he likes operating in some of those wider channels. The diving offload.
He might have been one of the guys who was more okay when Scott Penny was in Munster than your average
Munster man.
Forward.
He didn't mind hanging out on the wing and linking with backs.
He has his moments. He's a very skilled individual, and likewise, Caelan Daragh, supremely mobile, man of the match last week, wins contact but gets wide, gets his hands free.
Even Kelleher is
the other one.
In the front
Kelleher
row.
is the other one I'd look at as a guy who's been selected a lot for his over Herring for his mobility. And this is what Ireland have to bring. They have to be quick. Their forwards have to be quick, because without Sexton and without centres who can pass, really, they're going to be still a lot off Gibson Park, and it's still a lot of variety off Gibson Park. But what they've got to bring then is speed and linking up with one another.
Big job for Keenan as well, in terms of you have a young 10 there, a guy who's a bit inexperienced, and when we saw that with Billy Burns coming on last week, Keenan from fullback was slotting into first receiver a few times to create that link from Gibson Park. Like the conduit is still at 9 obviously, but even when Conor Murray had to go out in at 10, it was nice to see a few distributors in there operating outside of Gibson Park.
Keenan in there is definitely value. He's got good footwork, he's got a nice passing game, he's a decent read on the game.
He's a proper fullback.
Yeah, as a fullback coming in, he does need to. We were going to need to lean on him, especially with a young guy like Ross Byrne at 10.
Yeah,
it's definitely something.
Share the load.
Sharing the load is very important. And listen, they getting the centres we deride for not being great passers of a game. What they can be, both of them, is great runners of a ball and good offloaders of a ball.
It could be the first time in a few years that we have the more physical midfield than the English, and I would be surprised if we don't try and exploit that.
Like those exactly. Two and running it can happen off Ross Byrne, it can happen off Gibson Park. They can be sort of in that auxiliary flanker role where it can get frustrating.
Yeah.
But the key, I think, is breakdown speed and tempo, like getting James Ryan that little bit wider in his carries, having him link up with Daragh, maybe with an offload, then getting over the gain line, making it quick, and then getting the ball into the hands of the likes of Chris Farrell, having the English defence sat down. And that's where Chris Farrell actually looks quite nifty. If he can get in the contact and gets his hands free, he actually looks like he has a bit of skill to him, and he can get an offload away. Bundyaki picks as good a line as any centre in Europe.
It's true.
And he can slice through a defence. And then you can almost see the picture there for Ireland to get creative. It's just quickness off 9, subtlety in terms of who's getting the ball, so the English defence is sat down, linking up with each other, crucially, like when you're getting on top of a contact, have someone picking a tracking run off them, get an offload going, break up that English defence, don't be slow and reactive. That for me is the key. Like, Ireland have been so slow. They have to be quicker, they have to run around.
They have to
this
be the
English
quicker
pack.
team than England. They're a smaller team on balance than England,
especially up front. But they have some quick play. Like, they have some players who played under Leinster, high tempo footy, and they have to embrace that. They really do.
They do, and if they are starting to get that flow, then you'll start to see the likes of Keithers, the likes of James Lowe picking those lines off the likes of a Farrell Lackey and an offload, and just that kind of deception, that kind of width will serve them very well in terms of just removing the English dominance of the collision zone from as being as big a factor as it has been. If you can make it a bit more deceptive, all the while keeping the ball protected, like you do need to, if you are going to make a half break rather than a full line break, you need to be there to resource the breakdown, because England do have monsters on turnover as well. But the focus,
ball placement is huge as well, and just clearing the ruck and going quick. The ruck time has to be flipped like a 180 from what we have been doing in terms of slow rucks and slow build up and off 9. Like, England just love that shit. It has to be quick. It has to be all about tempo, and then running through the midfield. It's not even necessarily about width, but punching holes in the middle of the pitch. And then if those holes are effectively punched and you have a bit of room either on the short side or the open side to go wide, executing is crucial. But I suspect if England do narrow up, Ireland will go to the crossfield kick rather than the passing game, because honestly I don't think they have the hands to use an overlap if they have to take the full width of the pitch to do it, because by the time
whereas Ross Byrne's crossfield kick game is actually one of the better parts of his whole game.
It's the best way. It's Ireland's best method for getting wide in one phase. They won't do it without his boot, I would say.
It's probably true. It's unfortunate, but it's probably true. But just coupled with crossfield kick, just a more varied attacking kicking game, using the likes of James Lowe's like rangy left boot on exit.
I think on exit he has to be the guy that they look at.
Like, especially if England are going to pen it to the right hand side, where a right footed box kicker is going to have the angle narrowed for him. Be courageous enough to go pass
or even just bring Low in at 10.
I wouldn't mind fine. I wouldn't mind pass because you want to kind of rake across the thing. Like,
the danger with pass is shit pass.
But don't do bad pass. Like, pass perfectly executed and then an exit. Like, proactive exit. You need to be courageous.
I know, but
you need to mix it up.
I think getting like because if I'm England and I see Ireland going wide on their own try line, I go flying up into the face of the likes of Bundyaki. And then he's like, oh no, there is space, but his pass might be off, or he might hold on to the ball, God forbid, and get snagged. And then you can heap pressure on yourself by doing that. If they're under a bit of pressure and they want to relieve it, just getting James Lowe to sit deep in the pocket and boot the ball potentially is a better option than a box kick from Gibson Park, who doesn't box kick and shouldn't be asked to.
Yes, it's true. So just varying that up is definitely key for Ireland as well. And anything else to say on our offense? Score some tries, boys.
Let's hope that we can score some tries. The red zone. I mean, we talked about the red zone offense in the context of England, but from an Ireland point of view, it's really sad to look at. Like, when they get
why do we do an extra impression when we get 5 meters out?
It won't work against England, and even against Wales. You know, for the dominance that we had in the game, we scored one try in the last phase, and prior to that, one try with the bludgeoning red zone pick and jam attempt. I mean, I think 2 or 3 or 4 occasions we butchered them. We were in the 22 and we just couldn't convert the score. really, really shoddy stuff, and I just think being creative, bringing the same variety of shape, trusting Gibson Park to throw wide passes and then clearing and getting quick ball and moving it again, orchestrating a one-on-one with James Lowe and his opposite number. Yeah. Like, these are the kind of things you need to do when you're in the red zone as well as just deeper in the pitch. And Ireland, the fear in them when they get into the opposition 22, and the fact that they still think it's the best thing to try and spend 10 minutes scoring a try when they're down there is without question the worst thing about this team.
Yes.
It's awful to look at. It doesn't work. Yeah. It's killing them. And it has to, that's an area that has to improve.
Pro passes.
I wouldn't even hate to see, if England are flying up and stymieing them, I wouldn't even hate to see them. I know we hate it when we see the likes of Australia do it, a little kick in behind, like just being braver when they're in the opposition 22 would be something that would be refreshing. Because at the moment they're just petrified to move the ball.
Yeah, which is a problem, a thorough problem that needs. It would be nice to see them remedy that against England, where they have to.
Because they have to score tries. Yes. They've got to score tries. Like their try scoring is not great.
No, it's not. It's improved, but it's still not great. That's red zone conversion rate, obviously a huge factor as well. Yeah, and then just on D, which is where really the games have been lost before any of that offensive stuff has come thus far. Yeah, the defence, as you say, the quality of the tackle is the first, second and third port of call against this English guys. Can we please make proactive, dominant tackles and can meet them and match them on the collision zone and on the gain line? Yeah. And then you're in a game. I mean, but getting blown away in the first quarter is something I'm sick of looking at in these fixtures.
Yeah, in times gone by, in this last 5 games, we've seen guys like Ireland have leaned on big performances from the likes of CJ Stander and James Ryan, and so it can be just so psychologically damaging to see James Ryan just get out and out beaten by Itoje. Itoje's winning the contacts on a guy who we never see go backwards, and CJ Stander's been sat down by Billy Vunipola, and that English train rumbles on, and that has been something that has killed Ireland. I mean, I think, like, if you want to take inspiration, I would look at Los Pumas in terms of, it's something that I think has been sorely missing from Ireland's game for a long while now, is the level of sort of raw emotional energy that they fed off from each other. Yeah. Like, it seems kind of basic, but what Pablo Matera was saying, like, I play for my country, and just really wearing it on their sleeve, how much it meant to them to even be there, and how determined they were to represent their country as well as possible. Yeah, like, bringing that energy and feeding off that energy is how you get a big upset win. Yeah, like that. There's no other way to do it. And Ireland have done it in years gone by
in Twickenham,
but we haven't seen it for many years
now.
True.
Yeah,
and it's definitely something. I just think taking inspiration from them flying out of the line, not missing tackles, being aggressive, being proactive on defence, saying, I know your name is Patrick Tuipulotu and you've been doing bits for Australia. I don't care. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to do everything in my power to win the contact and then win it a second time if you're still on the feet. Yeah. And like, bringing that sort of raw emotional energy has been something Ireland have brought to games in the past. It's something they're absolutely going to need on defence here against England. If England are trying to sit you down, use their power game, bring in their class ball runners, Ireland are going to have to bring something extra.
Yeah, some big contacts. They have to be big momentum shifting tackles
and supporting each other when they get them. Like, if I remember seeing it against the All Blacks in 2018, might have been the last game that Ireland put out a shift like that in. Yeah, when you had a situation where I think Devon Toner caught Retallick, and Retallick was kind of stopped in his tracks, and then Ryan came in, and then they drove him back. They kept him on his feet and drove him back 10-15 yards or something like that. That's just a massive... Obviously, everything's lacking for the lack of fans. Like, obviously, Ireland are so great when the fans are responding to that. They're going mental. That's missing. But they do need to feed off that energy. They need to find a way to feed off their own energy. And put out a performance that is, enthusiastic and proactive and passionate. Yes. As compared to the sort of...
So key. And then beyond that, then there's technical factors like go low, chop. Try and if there's a big tree coming at you, try and chop it down from the below. Don't just run head first into the trunk of it, like all of these little technical things. But I think primarily you've hit the nail on the head. That's been the distinction with this Irish team, particularly on D and particularly against England. It's just not really being at the pitch of the game, certainly not at the ferocity level and intensity level that England have brought at the beginning.
Exactly. And England they get on top of the contacts, and then they bring a speed of ball and a quality of pass that's so difficult to live with. Ireland need to match the quality of the English quickness off the pace of the base of a ruck with their own quickness off line speed.
Yeah.
They need to be just as quick and just as proactive as England are.
And with Aki and Farrell, you probably have the most defensively robust centre partnership that Ireland can field. So get them proactively smashing their guys.
Get them out of the line and trust. Like, you've got to give, I think, the likes of Aki and Farrell carte blanche to get out on the line and shut out the outside.
Yeah,
you've got it. Like, they're good readers of a game on defence. They're good tacklers, both of them. Chris Farrell in particular has had some sensational performance on defence.
Against Sarries, actually, even he's shut down what was a formidable Sarries offence in Sarries' pomp a couple of years ago with his own just determined and very well executed reads.
I've seen him make great intercepts. I've seen him make phenomenal tackles. I've seen him completely shut down even great offenses in times gone by. So you have to trust him. And then what you have to do to make up for that is change the role of the scrum half on defence.
Where we were calling for it last week.
Fundamentally, it's just silly that, like, Gibson Park isn't Conor Murray. Murray's out of there, Gibson Park's in, which is good, and Gibson Park's a Kiwi scrum half. He needs to be covering the little chip. And you need to have the pendulum in full swing where you have two back three players back and a 9 sweeping, so that the backfield is well and truly covered. Because that's somewhere
England are going to
after.
Attacking kicks have been the death of us in these fixtures.
So you've got to trust one fewer man in the defensive line. You've got to trust your forwards to make their contacts and make their tackles, and then you've got to trust Chris Farrell to shut things down on the outside. With just the 12 or 13 men, the 12 men in the line, you've got to trust them to do that job and cover the backfield. Because if you don't, it's going to be rinse repeat what's happened so far. And dealing with those kicks, the quality of performance from the back three when they're there in terms of sweeping up that ball, not allowing England to get on top of them, dealing with it as quickly as possible and winning your forthcoming contact, or hopefully having a read on the kick such that you can catch it and kick it back before England get on top of you. Those are so key. Those are absolutely vital to Ireland's chances
for sure. So, just on balance, then, what are you thinking for this game?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, as we say, what we are expecting and hoping to see from Ireland is a game with much more passion and much more mobility and physicality as well. Getting on top of England, catching them sluggish. Are England going to be complacent? Maybe. I think it'll take England being complacent for Ireland to win. I don't think Ireland are at the stage yet where they can beat England at their best
in Twickenham.
I just don't think so. England are very, very good, and I think Ireland are probably just a little too green at this stage. I think if England put their pressure game on, all I want to see from Ireland is not to be blown away again in that first quarter, as you say, and not to be at the front of the game and to make it a game, and then from there to actually get some offense going and hopefully score some tries.
That would all be lovely.
England very, very tough, very, very tough in Twickenham. I know it was only Georgia last week, but I was bloody impressed by them then as well, toying with the Georgians, and they're a phenomenal team. Maro Itoje might be the best footballer in the world, might be the best player. So it's just a stark task in my mind. They have a chance. They always have a chance, but I have to think that England will have too much for us, and we'll find the tries, and we'll find the physicality. And even if the game is tight towards the end of it, that second half performance that Itoje likes to bring, and all of that physicality and all that playmaking they have in that forward pack, I suspect will be too much for us. And I say England by 7 or 8.
Yeah, reasonable. Well, I'm going to do my usual thing and vote with my heart and say that Ireland score a famous victory this autumn and disrupt Eddie Jones in all of his double trophy plans.
It's not impossible.
No, it's not.
Just
it is improbable, though, and I recognise that. But I am more optimistic about this Irish team. I think I like what we're trying to do.
I definitely think there's improvements. I don't I'm not quite on the Andy Farrell out train that I might have been getting close to hopping on board. This is obviously a much more telling game than the Italy game or the Wales game. The only other game where we played a top team was France, and we went right back to our slow selves. We kicked balls into the sky to the best counter-attacking team in the world, and they counter-attacked and ripped us apart, and it was dumb as well as bad and awful to watch.
That's my main prevailing problem.
I just want to see Ireland show up and not play directly into the hands of their top quality opposition away from home. I want to see them disrupt them a little bit. I want to see us play smarter. I don't want to see us being stupid and kicking them the ball when that's exactly what they want you to do.
Indeed. Well, at their very best, I think Ireland's greatest attribute when they're at their very best is to be a clever team. Not to be a smart bullying team, but to be a clever team and outthink you. So I would like to see a return to that form, because I don't think it's been the case for a couple of years that we've been outsmarting teams. I actually think especially when we go behind, we become one of the dumber teams in world rugby a lot of the time.
Desperate nonsense.
A lot of the desperado nonsense that comes out, I would rather see in a short performance. But I'm gonna vote green and say that we get a famous win.
I really hope so, but I just want a performance. That's all I want.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and share with your friends. And if you'd like to hear more of what we have to say, please be sure to subscribe and click that bell so you get notified when we upload our videos. And please join the comment section as well. We like to get a fun conversation going here.